Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all over the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have another wonderful, amazing guest. He is the CEO at Rarible. His name is Jonas Lamis. Jonas, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for hosting us and talking about Rarible.
You're very welcome. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the conversation. You had some big news come out recently. I want to get into that. First thing I want to do, though, is get into your background. I want to find out what your background is and is it logical for what you're doing now?
It actually surprisingly is logical. So if we go way back when I was a kid, I grew up in an art family. My dad was a sculptor in the 1970s who caught some fame and made these really interesting plexiglass cubist constructions that were shown in museums around the world. And so as a little kid, I was kind of dragged around through the art community and basically ended up hating the whole scene and not wanting to have anything to do with it, because who wants to have anything to do with what your parents do? So I proceeded to matriculate through an engineering career, if you will, and software, and got involved in startups in the early 2000s in Austin, Texas, and then I moved out to the Bay Area, to Palo Alto, and was fortunate enough to be a part of a couple interesting startups, one of which was in the machine learning space early, kind of a little too early, but we sold, that company was acquired in 2017. And when that acquisition happened, I kind of looked around in the Bay Area and said, hey, what have I missed for the last few years? And I kind of missed the whole early phase of the crypto revolution, if you will. Um, and so I started reading white papers and went down the crypto rabbit hole. And you could call me class of 2017, if you will. Um, Fell in love with Tezos. That was the first blockchain that I really got into. Did the ICO stuff back in the summer of 2017. And then started building in the crypto space and put a couple of entities together. But all of that ultimately led me to Ethereum. And I found out about this really cool DAO that was starting in 2020 called Flamingo DAO, which was a group of collectors in this emerging NFT Ethereum space. And so I joined that when it got started, and that pulled me into the NFT space. And I've been doing all kinds of fun stuff in that since 2020. And ultimately, that led me to getting introduced to the Rarible team back in 2024. And they were looking for somebody who had kind of expertise on the enterprise software side and had built companies and knew about SaaS and things like that, but also had this interest in collectibles and in digital art and the NFT side. And so it was a match made in heaven last year, and I joined the team and recently moved into the CEO role.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I too, it was a class of 2017. And I started interviewing the NFT creators back in 2021 when they first started becoming big. And it was wonderful to interview a whole bunch of awesome artists who were making money for the first time in their lives. So
It's the whole notion of like digital art being something that you can actually monetize and you can own uniquely, even though everybody always says you can just right click save as. So it's still a pretty radical concept, but people are catching on. When you were joining in 2017, what was the catalyst for you, or what was your first chain that you fell in love with?
oh God, I joined. I had been thrown out of AIG. A bunch of us, he just tailgated at the Jets game last weekend. We're fired. We had the same thing in common. And then I saw the market. I saw Bitcoin. I was like, well, that looks like a database. Um, Little did I know it was more than just a database. So, I got to
Absolutely.
do it. I got to do it. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is the Wild West. It was the Wild West. And then Ethereum. And then I started to follow Chainlink, Litecoin, stuff like that. So
Yep.
um, I have some NFTs that were built on Tezos as well. So yeah, so that
Early
was
days.
wonderful.
Yep.
Early days. So I want to find out what Rarible is all about and what now that you're the CEO. What's your role? What's your vision? What's your mandate? Your mission?
Yeah, totally. So, um, you know, anybody who's been around the NFT space knows the name Rarible. It's one of the OG brands from the earliest days. Alexi Fallon and his team started Rarible way back in 2019. And in 2020, it was kind of like the only place where creators could go and like create mints. Early on, I don't even think OpenSea, it was just emerging and didn't really have that functionality at the time. It was kind of the only place where you could do it permissionlessly, if you will. You might be able to get super rare to launch a project, for example, back then, but it grew really dramatically in 2020 and 2021. It was part of the massive hype of the first phase of NFT growth. The team was, I think, the first NFT platform to launch a token. So the Rari token was airdropped to people who had participated in the platform, I think in 2021 maybe, and the company raised some funds back then. Um, and really, it's a story of kind of a company that has surfed the ups and downs of the NFT space from the very earliest days and has persevered in a marketplace where there's been just a ton of consolidation, a ton of smaller brands have left, and new brands have sprung up and left, and whatnot. And the folks at Rarible before I joined were just really very conscious on trying to preserve their mission and keep the marketplaces growing. And that led them to look at new offerings in 2023, really is when the company started thinking about taking the marketplace technology that it had and packaging it up and offering it to other brands and other chains, almost like a white label service where you could have your own marketplace that was running on Rarible infrastructure. And that really kind of started to take off for Rarible in 2024. And a number of chains started running Rarible infrastructure. Everybody from Aptos to Eclipse to just dozens of chains started subscribing to it as a service. You wouldn't necessarily even know that it's running on Rarible necessarily in some of those cases, but the APIs and the infrastructure are all run by Rarible, and some cases the marketplace UIs are built and run by Rarible. And then some brands started coming on board. Had a really successful early customer growth with Mattel. And Rarible still runs the Mattel Hot Wheels marketplace, which is like a digital collectible, for the Hot Wheels cars, and some of them are like redeemable. You can buy the digital asset and redeem it for a physical asset. So it was really pioneering kind of in that world early on. A couple dozen other brands joined in 2024, some sports teams, some entertainment companies, toy companies definitely are involved. And then here in 2025, we really started thinking about what is the future of commerce on chain broadly. Like everybody talks about, how DeFi is going to take over all of finance, but not very many people are yet talking about how decom, whatever that is, decentralized commerce is going to take over all of commerce, but we kind of think it will. And so that led to the kind of the news that we had earlier this week where we launched a new set of products that are really focused on that space.
So yeah, I want to get into those products. Awesome. So you mentioned the cars. My son's 16 now. He started driving. And then
Good
he's
luck.
like, "Yeah, I want it, Dad. I want a car. Dad, I want a car." I said, "Close your eyes. Hold out your hand." I put a Hot Wheels car in his hand. He didn't. He didn't think it was
What
funny. I
what'd you
did.
what'd you buy him? What'd you buy him?
I didn't buy him anything yet. No, it was a Hot Wheels car. It was a
No, I
little
mean,
car.
what Hot Wheels did you give him? Was it a 69 Mustang or a Corvette or
Uh, I think it was a
some?
Chevelle. I think it was a
Yeah,
Chevelle.
there you go. There we go.
So
Yeah, definitely.
he's not going to get that for a real car. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
I hear you.
Um, on you launched on-chain storefronts, right? So I want to find out more about those. What makes them unique? How the launch go, and what looking forward to happening.
Yeah, so one of the probably the big hairy problem that is facing crypto in general, certainly facing digital asset space, in my opinion, is still like, how do you get normal people to care about it, and how do you get normal people to engage with it? Yeah, I mean, we were all normal people at once, and some of us have taken the leap and figured out how to run a wallet, and how to have a seed phrase, and how to protect our assets and all the self-sovereign stuff. But it doesn't it doesn't seem like the next billion people are there yet. And so there's this big problem of like, maybe people want to buy digital Hot Wheels or trading cards or Pokemon experiences or things like that, but how do they do it in a way where it feels like traditional commerce almost? And so there's some brands there's some companies that are working on that. Shout out to Shopify. They've been thinking about this quite a bit. Shout out to Stripe and their recent Privy acquisition. They're thinking about this quite a bit, and at Rarible we're thinking about it quite a bit as well. And so what we've been architecting is kind of both the experience for a brand or a merchant or a creator to be able to stand up, we'll call it a storefront, much like you could launch a Shopify storefront, or you could use any Wix or something like that to have a storefront creator built or something like that. So we want to empower all brands, emerging brands, the creator class, influencers, to be able to sell stuff on chain. And then we also want to make it easy for their communities to buy that stuff on chain. And so that those two pieces going together is what we recently launched with kind of the Rarible on-chain storefront offering. Um, the the first part of that is our team's product expertise and our ability to build user experiences that are friendly and consumer facing. The second part of that is working with partners, in particular with Privy, to provide kind of the wallet infrastructure on the back end, where you don't need to have anything really more than an email to get started with that. And then also with Crossmint, who has provided technologies to allow credit cards to be used for those on-chain transactions. And so we've kind of bundled all that together into a user experience. And then we launched our very first customer on that technology stack 3 days ago with Gary V and his VFriends experience. So if you go to rarible.com/VFriends, you'll see what this experience looks like.
That's very cool. He has a huge following, so that's going to be good for business. So
Definitely. He has a huge following. He's such a believer in the future of decentralized commerce, of crypto. And the VFriends cards that he's created are so positive, right? It's a positive experience. Each one, your card finds you and you find your card, and now you have a way where you can actually just buy that card with a credit card instead of having to go get some ETH from somewhere to make it happen.
awesome. I think you said something earlier. You said about normality. I don't think I've ever been normal. So that fit right in. But I like the VFriends, and I like the collectibles landscape. So I want to find out what the current landscape of digital collectibles are, and what you've learned about the evolution through this evolution over the past several years.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that the pioneering work that the on-chain PFP projects did back in 2020, 2021, 2022 is really fascinating. So we just had this emergence of a lot of crypto focused brands that created pretty sizable audiences. Maybe it starts with CryptoPunks from Larva Labs, and then it goes to Bored Apes and what they did, and then you have like the Moonbirds, and then the Moonbirds fiasco, and then the Moonbirds rebirth that we have now, and then 100 other interesting projects, and then another 1,000 projects behind that that have found communities as well with this collectible PFP model. Um, and in many ways, the traditional um, the traditional collectibles vendors, which come out of maybe like the baseball card world, for example, and then the trading cards and certainly the Pokemon world, um, have a lot to learn from what has happened over the last couple of years in the crypto space. But again, our little world in the crypto space is so small compared to the broader world of collectibles. And you still got Labubus, and every day you have these interesting, collectible things that are coming out of the real world with physical assets that you look at it and you're like, oh man, there's some really interesting ways those brands could take advantage of the digital functionality that we've built here in the crypto space. And so the real opportunity now is to make those two worlds unite, to build on top of the great functionality that native crypto infrastructure is built, but apply it to the brands that the rest of the world wants to own, right? I think Courtyard, for example, has done a really admirable job of pioneering this intersection around Pokemon cards. The fact that they provide a ecosystem where Pokemon cards, there's a massive secondary market for them on eBay and all these other card trading sites. And what they've done is they've figured out a way to acquire those physical assets, you know, turn them into digital assets that are, digital twins of the physical. They custody the physicals, they produce the digitals, and then they provide those digitals in a packaged way so that you can have that same pack ripping experience that you'd get with a physical, but you can do it in the digital realm. And that has drawn, I think that's been a gateway for a lot of new people to come into the space over the last year or so, since Courtyard's been pushing that forward. And and um, and I personally think that functionality is going to, expand broadly across many different real world collectibles over the next year or two.
Got it. So, um, interesting because you have that's a good example. Pokemon's a good example, but those things you say, there a lot of those companies have something to learn. The Web3 companies have something to learn to get into Web3. So I'm thinking, like, what are some of those? Like, would some of those things be like engagement, more accessibility? What would they be to get them to be in the web, their customers and their clients and their fans to enter into Web3?
So I think most of the lack of entry has been on us in the crypto community doing things differently. Certainly, we just talked about how difficult it is to get started in crypto, and from an infrastructure perspective and a token perspective and things like that. That needs to be solved. As I mentioned, we're solving it in an interesting way with the Rarible storefronts, but more and more platforms that want to onboard non-crypto people are going to have to solve it as well. Um, the second thing I think is that people are wary of the NFT name because it has, mixed connotations associated with it, for sure. And the traditional media has done us no favors, certainly, in helping explain. We've done ourselves no favors in helping explain what's really going on, and certainly there have been so many like dubious projects that really should not have received kind of the attention that they received, and therefore has created a rather bad name for some of those things. But I do think again that we're now entering a 5-year period where a lot of that is behind us now. We don't have to call things NFTs necessarily so much anymore. What Gary Vee's doing, for example, is a great pioneering example of this. And I think we're going to see a lot of traditional brands starting to experiment with that model. And there's a lot of reasons why those traditional brands should experiment. Obviously, like you said, community is a really interesting one. But I think one thing we should talk about, and I'll just pause after I say this, which is that there is this new shift in how you know younger folks, millennials and Gen Zers and stuff have the relationship that they have with money and the relationship that they have with risk. And you see it from sports betting to prediction markets. Things are changing quite a bit on how people are thinking about the risks that they want to take with the funds that they have. And that plays really well into the digitization of physical assets, I think.
Maybe I'm wrong, because I don't understand. I know my 16-year-old was the last year of Gen Z, right? And my younger son is Gen Alpha. The Gen Z, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand the fascination with the meme coins, with the gambling, with the. I see greater risk taking. I don't see less
Oh,
risk
for
taking.
sure.
So,
For sure.
um, with that greater risk taking, how do we? A lot of people don't trust massive risk takers, right? How do we garner that? How do we bring that trust? How do we develop trust between brands and between the young people who are gambling? How do we connect? How do we connect the dots and
Oh,
bring
Jamil,
stability? How do you do that?
you're such a boomer. You're such a
Well,
boomer.
Gen X, Gen X. I'm Gen
I
X.
know you and me. We're Gen X, but for purposes of like anybody under age 25, we're definitely boomers. And I think when you say, people don't trust the massive risk takers, I think that is more of a uh, that's more of a thing that relates to 40s and up. Like I think that the younger generations, certainly like your son and whatnot, they lean into that, I believe. And as the 25 and unders start to, permeate themselves throughout industry and throughout business and throughout these platforms, I think risk taking is going to become more and more of an accepted form of entertainment, be it from sports betting or prediction markets, be it from meme coins or from buying a collectible on chain and then borrowing against that collectible on a lending market and then using those additional funds to buy a meme coin that might track the success of the underlying collectible that they have. I think those kinds of models are just going to continue to proliferate. And it's one reason why the traditional brands need to be paying attention to what's going on in the crypto space, because those Gen Alphas want to have that kind of fun experience. They want to go to the crypto casino, and that they if the traditional brands don't figure out a way to flow their brand culture into that, then they're going to also be boomer brands as well.
So really, the boomer CEOs and the Gen X CEOs, if there are any, the boomer CEOs are going to need to embrace, that shift in order for those boomer companies to become successful long term.
Yeah, and probably a lot of them will just kind of obviously there's large built-in markets for traditional brands for quite a while, but I imagine, even you see it on TikTok today, all the new brands that are emerging and all the, influencer brands that are emerging. And we see a number of those types of folks who are coming to Rarible and they're like, how do I take advantage of on-chain commerce with my brand? We're building out a number of interesting brand pages for the TikTok scene right now. Yeah, and I think so. It's just going to be a really interesting turnover of what people pay attention to or where they put their earnings over the next 5, 10 years.
Interesting, interesting. Another thing you brought up, and you said this, and I was curious. You said Pokemon acquisition, right? So I'm thinking how the future of NFTs and collectibles could be changed or strengthened or transformed through M&A and consolidations.
Yeah, so I think when I was referring to acquiring Pokemon, just to be clear, to clarify, I was talking about how the Courtyard product and company buys the physical trading cards. And then they digitize those and make and resell them as digital assets while they've custodied the physical assets. So I think I think that model can happen to, a lot of existing brands like take, Fanatics or Tops or things like that. They have all these collectibles that exist in the physical world that have rarities and traits associated with them. These are perfect things to put into this digital marketplace as well. Yeah, so that's where I think it's going on that front. And I do think that along with that, you're going to see brand new digital brands like VeeFriends and others who can compete against the traditional brands.
Got it. So, yeah. So some of the, what if I, the online marketplaces that are being developed, that are being strengthened, that are growing, for founders who are new to the game, what are some of the best secrets that they should know, or best practices that they should follow to be able to help them build their presence on an online marketplace? And then what should they not do too?
Yeah, there are definitely some really cool things that if you're a you've spun up a TikTok channel and you've started building an audience related to a product or service that you're offering, or some collectible that you've created or something like that. I think there are some really interesting things that you can do now in the crypto space. And you know, one of the things that was holding crypto back over the last 4 or 5 years, at least in the United States, but in a number of countries, was kind of a lack of a lack of kind of what is the regulations that we have to deal with from a governmental perspective. Um, when you had um, what was the name of that? There was a number of NFT projects that were like sued by the SEC because they were saying that their NFTs were actually securities. I can't remember what that one was that Ashton Kutcher had going. But anyway, there's one project that like got shut down because the SEC threatened to sue the team behind it. And the great news now is that we are getting all kinds of what we call regulatory clarity that says, you know what, collectibles are collectibles, they're not securities. If you're minting an NFT, if you're flipping NFTs, you go off and do that all you want. The government's not going to come after you. Those are not securities. They're not subject to the SEC, and so forth and so on. So that's really going to let new influencers and others release things and sell them and create a monetization model around those things, and encourage people to buy them and trade them, hold them if they think they're going to go up in value, but not have to worry that the government's going to come knocking for something that you're doing that's illegal.
That's good. No one wants the government knocking. So we want to educate them on what they should be doing. So,
Yeah, that's right. But
you
just
know,
keep it shut down. That's fine. No, I'm kidding, but yeah.
I'd agree with you. So, awesome. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I enjoyed speaking with you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I have one last question. It's, how can people find out more information about you, about Rarible? How can they start to get engaged in the collectibles and NFT space for crypto? How can they do that?
Yeah, totally. Um, well, I would encourage everybody to go check out this on-chain commerce world that we're creating. As I mentioned, a great URL to go to is rarible.com. And if you go to rarible.com/vfriends, it's VEE friends, then you'll see it in action. And you can take Gary V's quiz there and figure out what kind of VFriend are you. And then for, $50, you can buy your first digital collectible right there just with a credit card. So that's a really cool way to experience what's happening there. From a socials perspective, definitely Rarible on X is where a lot of our content comes out, but we also have accounts on Instagram and TikTok as well. So you can find us there. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm also on X, just my first and last name, Jonas Lamis. So those places to find me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Okay. Hey, appreciate it. And good luck to everybody out there as you find your home in the crypto world.